All right, so we got the fourth track on NF's therapy session album. This is How Could You Leave Us? So you've never heard this song. I heard this song.
From what I remember, it's about his mom, right?
Yes. Yes.
How could you leave so unexpected? We waited for you, but you just left us. We needed you, I needed you. Yo, I don't know what it's like to be addicted to pills, but I do know what it's like to be a witness to kills. Mama told me she loved me, I'm thinking this isn't real. I think of you when I get a whiff of that cigarette smell, yeah. Welcome to the bottom of hell. They say pain is a prison, let me out of my cell. You say you proud of me, but you don't know me that well. Sit in my room, tears running down my face, and I yell into my pillowcases. Say you coming to get us, then call a minute later just to tell us you're not. I'm humiliated. I'm in a room with a parent that I don't barely know. Some lady in the corner watching us while she's taking notes. I don't get it, mom. Don't you wanna watch your babies grow? I guess pills are more important. All you have to say is no, but you won't do it, will you? You gon' keep popping till them pills kill you. I know you're gone, but I can still feel you. Why would you leave us? Why would you leave us? How could you leave us? How could you leave us? Why would you leave us? Oh. I got this picture in my room and it kills me, but I don't need a picture of my mom, I need the real thing. Now a relationship is something we won't ever have, but why do I feel like I lost something that I never had?
It's interesting because there's like certain scenes where like when the mom is with him, like they're all happy, and then when you see that there's like a close-up to the mom, it's almost comparable to like when he's alone too. You notice that? So when she's alone, she's crying, and when he's alone, he's upset too. So in a sense, they're both very alike in that way. And I like how in the beginning you can tell he's portraying NF because he has like the black cap, which seems to be like his trademark.
Relationship is something we won't ever have, but why do I feel like I lost something that I never had? You should have been there when I graduated. Told me you love me and congratulations. Instead you left us at the window waiting. Where you at, mom? We're too young to understand. Where you at, huh? Yeah, I know them drugs that got you held captive. I can see it in your eyes, they got your mind captured. Some say it's fun to get the high, but I am not laughing. And what you don't realize and what you're not grasping, that I was nothing but a kid who couldn't understand it. I ain't gonna say that I forgive you cause it hasn't happened. I thought that maybe I'd feel better as time passes. If you really cared for me, then where you at then?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, as traumatic of an experience this must be for anybody, including NF, it's definitely like the origin of like where his music stems from. Like you have the abandonment issues, you have the resentment, so all of this. And at the time of going through this, especially when you lose that person, so you're no longer able to communicate with that person, you're left with these feelings, right? So like, although it's very traumatic, if it wasn't for this experience, there wouldn't be an NF.
Yeah, that's true.
If he grew up with his mom and he didn't go through these issues where, she was addicted to drugs and she wasn't there for him, like he wouldn't have this resentment, this anger, like this need to express his emotion. Because like, especially with anger, I've always said like, you need to find a way to express anger. Like those emotions that most people consider negative. If you know how to use that negative emotion in a way where it can produce something positive, there's a lot of power behind that.
Yeah.
So, obviously it's one of those things where it's a gift and a curse at the same time.
I agree with that, because if you look at his experience with seeing his mother, like constantly drugged up, he's developed such a hate for it that he doesn't ever want to touch it, which you can tell because in the beginning he talks about how he doesn't know what it feels like to pop pills.
Right.
And I'm guessing it's because he's seen his mom, I guess, die from it, that he has this like hatred for it.
Right.
So it also makes me think about, very successful people. Oftentimes you hear that they come from, impoverished like backgrounds, and it's because they've been so exposed to being poor that it's something that they just can't stand living. So they become so successful because they've seen how it feels like to be so poor, or so, it doesn't necessarily have to be poor, but let's say they see a parent that has like a gambling problem. Some kids, they see it and they mirror that parent, but I think other kids who take that and turn it around, they take that negative into a positive where they don't touch it at all.
Right. Well, I think in F's case, where like, I don't even know, and this is just my opinion, I don't even think it has anything to do with money or being poor. It's just like, I think it's what fuels him. I think every rapper, obviously, monetary is always a great reward, obviously, right? But I think for him, it's just expressing that, finding a way to express that. And I think that even goes for just like artists that actually paint or anything, even fighters, where it's like, it's just that way to like express yourself. And then the money just kind of comes. Because like if it was monetary value, like when you spend that many years writing music, I don't even think, I mean, obviously you can think about money especially if you're impoverished, if you're struggling, financially, but like, it's just that you can tell like with very successful artists, they just love to make music. The money I think is more secondary. Primary is just like this, it becomes who they are. It becomes what they use to cope. Especially someone like NF, he's very self-aware. So I think for him especially, he uses it as a way to cope with his emotions.
And you can tell because like it doesn't look like his lifestyle's changed.
Yeah, because his level of introspection is extremely high. Like, I don't know if he actually went to therapy. I'm assuming he did.
He must have.
But like, or even like if he didn't, like he's developed a very high awareness of like how he feels internally. And you can tell by like his lyrics.
Feel better as time passes. If you really cared for me the way you acting, why would you leave us? Why would you leave us? How could you leave us? How could you leave us? Why would you leave us? Our last conversation, you and I sat in the living room talking about my music, and I brought you something to listen to. You started crying, telling me this isn't you. A couple weeks later, guess you were singing a different tune. You took them pills for the last time, didn't you? They took you from us once, I guess they came back to finish you. Crying my eyes out in the studio is difficult. Music is the only place that I can go to speak to you. It took everything inside of me not to scream at your funeral. Sitting in my chair, that person talking was pitiful. I wish you were here, mama, but every time I picture you, all I feel is pain. I hate the way I remember you. They found you on the floor. I could tell you felt hollow. Give everything you had, plus your life to them pill bottles.
I think everyone that suffers with drug addiction should hear this song. And the reason why I say that is because I think people that abuse drugs don't realize how much they're affecting the people around them. Where this is just my personal opinion. I grew up with a lot of people that did drugs. I know quite a few people that overdosed, ones that were very close to me. Where like, I don't think, and it's not their fault, but like, I don't think they realize the impact they have on their parents or on their children or the people close to you that want to see you do well, because you're just so busy chasing this high that you're not even considering like the impact you're making on the ones closest to you. Where I think someone that abuses drugs, like if they if they knew the impact, if they knew how their parents felt or their kids felt, I think it would motivate or like inspire them to be like, you know what, maybe I should change because it's affecting these people that are so close to me in such a in such a in such a way where it's like it's traumatizing. I don't think they understand like how traumatizing it is for the people around them.
I think the reason why people who struggle with addiction don't really think about that is because they're not self-actualized. They're not self-aware. They're not self-aware of their own addiction. Because if they were and they understood that it was something that was kind of eating away at them, they would change. And that's what I think.
Yeah. I think they are self-aware. I think they're self-aware. I think they just and it's hard, and it's it's very debatable because everyone's different, but like I think they're aware, but they don't know how to cope, or like they don't have the proper like support system. It's why NA groups are so big, because it's like it comes from trauma. It stems from wanting to cope. Like it's easy to drink, to cope, to smoke, to cope, to do a drug, to relapse, because you're trying to cope with something that's very uncomfortable. So it's a way to kind of release that. And people cope in different ways. Sometimes not just drugs. You can cope with sex or gambling. There's a lot of different ways to cope. And I think that's what it stems from, just to kind of deal with whatever it is you're dealing with.
On the floor, I could tell you felt hollow. Gave everything you had, plus your life to them pill bottles. You gave everything you had, plus your life to them pill bottles. Don't know if you hear me or not, but if you're still watching, why? Why would you leave us? Why would you leave us? How could you leave us? How could you leave us? Why would you leave us? Sometimes I think about things like, when I have kids and like, you won't be there, you won't be there for any of that. I'll never get to see you again. Sometimes I wish I would have just called you. I wish I would have just picked up the phone. I wish you were here. I mean, you should have been there for us. You should have been here. The pills got you right. And pills got you right. I wish you were here.
That ending with him talking to his mother and crying to her, but also kind of like lashing out at her with anger. It's very raw, because you ever get mad after being so sad? Isn't it such an interesting relationship between the two?
Yeah, it's funny. We've had this conversation before where I always like state that like anger is a substitute emotion.
Yeah.
So like for someone like NF, I wouldn't be surprised if he's sad, but the way he's expressing sadness is through anger. Anger is the substitute emotion. Really what he's feeling is he feels hurt. And I think the main thing is, just from what I've seen and just from what I've experienced in my life, is that like being in his shoes, it's easy to feel helpless, right? Because you want something so bad, but there's really nothing you can do in a situation where someone close to you is addicted to something like drugs, because there's nothing you can do, like realistically.
Mm-hmm.
You can only do so much.
Yeah.
So that feeling of helplessness I know for me, like it can cause a lot of anger because like you want something to change so bad, but you know, like there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
You know.
It's probably one of the worst feelings, you know, because I think about people who struggle with something that's so internal. And as an outsider, you know, we all know like the right answer for them. But for them to realize, like, that's why I think that for people who struggle with addiction, they aren't self actualized. Because if they were, they would change.
Yeah, but something like changing doesn't come easy. So even being aware of something, it's easy to be aware of something, but to actually do it is a whole nother conversation. Like having the discipline, like knowing what to do and actually doing something is very different. It's very
You're right.
difficult. So like someone could be like, oh, I really need to stop doing this shit. I really got to stop doing drugs. Like you know what you need to do. You know why you do it. You might even hate yourself for it, but you just keep going back to it. So I don't think it's necessarily has anything to do with self-awareness because I think a lot of times they're very self-aware, but they just can't escape that vicious cycle of wanting to go back to that. It's almost like a temptation in a sense.
And that's why I believe that if you're self actualized, you'll understand how to talk to yourself so that you don't go back to that same pattern of that addictive behavior.
Right.
If you're truly self actualized and aware.